We have carefully studied the macro fundamentals affecting our country, and we find that we have to go through a short period of time until such time that tourism receipts could improve. As you know, we took over at the time when our reserves were around 7.6 billion, but we have so far paid 6 billion last year, about 5.3 billion this year, and we have a total reserve of around 5 billion, which is inclusive of a swap that we have received from the People's Bank of China, which means that we are in a position to steer clear of any danger as we go on. So one is the debt that we have to manage, and we are managing that with new inflows that will come in the form of government to government inflows, as well as central bank swaps that will tide us through this difficult period in the short term. And at the same time, we are working on new inflows as far as FDI is concerned, and also monetization of certain underutilized assets. Now, the FDI that came through yesterday was a big one, which was the West Terminal that has been now launched in partnership with an Indian firm and a Sri Lankan firm and the Sri Lankan Ports Authority. I think that's one of the highlights. The port city is going on a reasonable scale. So with the new areas that we have opened out, we are confident that the inflows would be substantial, and those substantial inflows would help us to go through this period and beyond with a lot more confidence that we have done in the past. So we are awaiting the arrival of new tourists once the country is opened out, and today is the day that we have opened out the country, and that's an exciting time for us. And with that, with the new areas that we have opened out, as far as FDI, as well as monetization of certain underutilized assets, we're confident that we can build up our reserves and face any consequence with a lot more confidence in the future.
Mm-hmm. And so we do wish you all the best in that fight. But when we're talking about inflows of cash to help tide it over, as you mentioned there's one thing is foreign direct investment. Sounds very interesting, that project there. On the other hand, this government-to-government inflow you're talking about, the recent injection from the People's Bank of China, how much is that just adding to the debt burden, and what are the repayment terms like?
The swap that we have received from China will be one between the two central banks that would be having no consequence on the overall debt of the government, because that is a central bank to central bank transaction, which helps us to build reserves as well as provide the confidence to the markets. And in addition to that, what we are mainly doing is to ensure that the government-to-government loans that we are now negotiating would help us to reduce the exposure that Sri Lanka has towards the international sovereign bonds. As you know, we have been having a build-up of international sovereign bonds, which in terms of some challenges could be an additional burden unless the term is increased. So right now, we have taken an overall policy call that we would keep the ISBs at around the 10% mark as far as GDP is concerned, and therefore, as many ISBs as possible, the international sovereign bonds as possible, we would attempt to settle with new inflows that are coming in, which are non-debt creating, and also through government-to-government debt, which will be essentially longer term. So I think that strategy would be very important for us to change the mix of our debt, which would help us to make it a lot more stable than what it is now.